house needs painting, grass needs mowing, where's he at?
Hi, this is Hank. Sorry I missed your call. Leave me your name and your number and I'll get back to you.
He's gone fishing.
All right, welcome to Off the Water with Hank Parker. I'm your co-host, Sarah Beth, and you are...
I am Hank Parker, and here we are. We have got a special guest again today, man, a guy I admire and respect. He and I got to fish together. He knows what's going on. Mr. Glenn May with Bass Resource.
Well, hello, Mr. Parker.
Glenn.
Good to see you. Good to see you, Sarah Beth. Thanks for having me on your show.
Man, we're excited about it. So tell the whole world, now most everybody knows, but tell the whole world who you are and what you do.
Well,
what is Bass Resource?
So I own and operate Bass Resource. I started it back in 19 a while ago, and it's a bass fishing kind of hub. There's a community on there where bass fans can come, and there's a big forum that we can sit there and talk back and forth. And we also have a bunch of articles on there, a bunch of how-to articles, all designed to help you become a better bass angler.
Well, now you've been doing this longer than anybody. I guess you're kind of the pioneer of bass information. You know, once you get out of Bassmaster Magazine and all the magazines, you kind of brought this thing to the forefront. I don't know, way ahead of everybody else, I guess.
Started in '96, before Google. Wow. So, back in the days of Alta Vista and Netscape, before really any other bass fishing site existed, Bassmaster actually came on a few years after. I guess Bass Resource was the first publisher out there as far as online publishers.
Online publishers. Now, how did you come up with this idea?
So back when the internet was first starting, I was looking for information on just how to and how other people are fishing around the country. And I found a bunch of those. Remember back in the day, people had their own personal web page, right? So there's a bunch of these personal web pages, and people were like, "Hi, this is me. I like bass fishing, and here are my links." And they all link to each other, but that was it. There really wasn't any content out there. And I thought to myself, well, shoot, if no one's doing it, then I'll do it. Okay, I'll just start doing it and just see what happens. And that's kind of how the ball got rolling.
Man, that's amazing. In '96, I still had a flip phone.
And the funny thing about it actually is, I started in television, in broadcast television. And when the internet came on, I saw this one day, I saw a little pixelized video that was on a web page. And I said, I like that. That's going to be something someday. I need to be there, but I don't know anything about websites. So I taught myself HTML and JavaScript and usability, and I kind of built a Bass Resource, the beginnings of that. And then I went to Microsoft and I said, look, I've seen your videos and they suck. But I know a little bit about video, and you guys know a little bit about web. I don't know anything about web. So what do you think we kind of help each other out? And they said, yeah, I think that's a good match. And so they hired me. And I thought, okay, Bass Resource did its job as kind of a resume. But I saw a lot of people were visiting it. And I thought, well, why not? Let's just keep it running and see where it goes. And it just kind of took off from there. And here we are 30 years later.
Hey, what an awesome vision, and what a resource, not to play on words, but what a resource to have somebody like you that's lassoing all this information and bringing articles alive on the web where a guy can go in and get information and become a better fisherman. How many subscribers or followers does Bass Resource have today?
Well, we have over 75,000 members in the forums. We got close to 140,000 subscribers on YouTube, and we get close to, during the off season, we get about 1 million visitors a month, and during the busier months, we get about 1.5 million visitors per month. So it's I never would have thought it would have turned into what it is today. It's incredible. I pinch myself sometimes. It's like, how did this happen? This is so cool. I really enjoy it.
Well, you honestly, you deserve it for having that entrepreneurial spirit and mindset and vision to see where this thing was going. So you've earned your stripes, and I commend you for that. And my question is, do you try to find the most information and the most story-worthy, or do you post everything that comes down the pike? What is the objective when you sit down and you say, hey, I want to be a benefit to all these anglers. I want to give fishing information. I want to make sure that it's good. Do you edit? Do you look for and approve everything, or can anybody send information that gets put on
I have a team
Bass
of writers.
Resource?
And we sit down and go through every year what our editorial calendar will be. The focus and emphasis is helping anglers of all skill levels become better anglers. So it goes beyond just the beginning articles, which there's plenty of that, and we do obviously do that. But even for the advanced tournament angler who's looking for that edge, or how to do something a little bit better, or a technique he hasn't tried before, teaching them those nuances that can help them catch more fish. So we have that focus on it, and we look at what's coming in the future, what's cutting edge. I go to ICAST every year and I see what's coming, and so we make sure that we cover those, do those techniques. I went to Japan earlier this year, and they do a lot of things differently over there as far as bass fishing. So we want to bring some of that over to the States. So there's that piece of it. And then there's also the educational part of it. I've partnered with a company, the magazine called Pond Boss magazine, with Bob Lusk, and he's a fisheries manager. And we go beyond just the how to flip and pitch and what baits to use, but really into bass behavior and how they relate in their environment, and the food chain, and how being good stewards of the environment really help with your bass fishing. And you can help understand how bass relate to their environment as the seasons change, or as the conditions within their environment change. What happens in that environment, or when you see a big fish kill, like what caused that? Why is that? And it can be prevented. So we try to go beyond just here's your how-to and how to cast, pitch, and catch bass, if that makes sense. Anything educational to help you really catch fine bass.
That is Yeah, I think that is awesome. I think anytime we can get involved in something that is protecting the environment, making fishing better, and understand what takes place if there's a fish kill. The largemouth bass virus that caught us all off guard 25 years ago. It would have been good if you would have been in place 25, 30 years ago when all this started taking place, where we could have maybe hedged our bet a little bit and not lost so many lakes that we subjected to the virus. So it's really, conservation is a very big part of who we are and what we do as anglers. And we need to unite and have a point of focus that we can come to. And it's great that you're taking that lead. That is awesome.
Fish care is a big component of what we teach and advocate. There's a lot of misconceptions out there. And so we try to clear out the clutter and help educate folks on exactly how to handle a bass in the summertime versus in the wintertime, for example. Not all fish need to be fizzed. Some folks think they need to be fizzed right away if they came from the deep. Things like that. So it's really fun to be a part of that, and to see the light bulbs click on and people to learn and become better anglers and stewards of our environment as a result. That just, if I can be any part of that and help dispense that information, that is, mission accomplished, right? And you do a lot of that, Hank. You've been doing that for a long time.
That is awesome.
I kind of taken a model in your footsteps, to be honest. Watching your shows over the years and seeing what you do and how you educate your viewers. It's a very similar model. You've really inspired me to take a similar approach.
Well, man, that is flattery in high regards, and I'm grateful for that. It's all about sharing information, making information fun. Fishing needs to be fun. We talk about all the technology and the advancements that have come into play in the recent years, and some of the technology has taken a little bit of the fun out of the sport itself, and so we got to always keep it fun. And I learned early on in my career. If you're going to offer information to anglers on how to improve and how to learn and how to catch more fish, you got to do it in a way that's fun, not in a way of teaching a class necessarily, but on the water demonstrations and showing how much fun it is to catch fish. I've fished a long time, and I don't always catch them, but it's more fun to catch them than it is to not catch them. So you make that information fun.
If you make it entertaining. To be honest with you, there's a lot of reasons to go fishing, but the primary one is relaxation, recreation, and enjoy time with your friends and family. And the catching tends to be tertiary at that point. And sometimes we get so caught up in the how-tos and, I've got to get 5 fish or, some kind of an arbitrary goal. It does take the fun out of it. I used to fish 25 tournaments or more a year. And I got to the point where either I was in a tournament or I was pre-fishing for another tournament. And I got so much into that competitive nature of it, I finally realized, this is turning more into a job than it is fun. So you have to know what that is. Some people absolutely love the competitive nature of it, and that is fun to them. And I do enjoy that. But when it gets to a point where that's all I'm doing, then I realize I'm missing out on some of the making memories with my friends and family. So there's a balance that everybody has, and having that fun part of it injected into whatever it is you do, whether it's trophy bass hunting or taking your grandkids out, that's a vital component to fishing.
Well, I think you're spot on. And you and I had the privilege of hooking up and going fishing down at Lake Caroline about 8 or 9 years ago. I don't even know how long ago it was. You had more pepper then than you have salt, and now I see you're like me. You got more salt than you do pepper. So I think that's probably been 10 years or so ago. And I started kind of looking into who you were and what you had to offer. And the people that depend on Bass Resource, I said, well, do you get information? Tell me about what's the benefit of logging on and getting involved with Bass Resource. And they said, there's a lot of information out there, but with Bass Resource, the information is solid. It honestly, they've waded through all the weeds, and they've taken the tears out, and it's just solid information that benefits me as an angler and helps me learn to be a better fisherman. So I depend on Bass Resource, and I put all my trust because they've earned that. So the credibility that you've earned with your site among your followers is pretty incredible.
Wow, I don't know what to say to that. Thank you. That's quite the compliment. Gosh, thank you so much, Mr. Parker. And it's got a lot to do with not just the writing team I have and the editorial, what we do, but also the forums that we have. People freely exchanging information. There's this. Sometimes people think that fishermen don't want to develop the secrets and they want to keep things to themselves, but it's not like that on our forums. People are there to help each other and to answer questions and to provide new information. And you have all kinds of questions on there all day long about, someone's got a particular situation on a pond in North Carolina, and there's immediately someone who's like, hey, I've done the same thing and I've run up against the same problem, and here's how I did it, right? That kind of exchange of information, you can't manufacture. That's very organic and very real, coming from real anglers with real experience. And sometimes I just sit back and read all this, and I learn from it too. It's like, I don't know everything. And to learn from these guys that are, very well versed and experienced. Someone up in Michigan catching fish, and when it's snowing out, is just, wow, it's been a real fun ride and real fun experience, and I just hope to keep it going as long as we can.
Well, you're in the extreme west, and in 1979, when I went to Lake Powell to fish my first Western bass tournament, I realized I met Fred Ward, I met Dee Thomas, I met Gary Klein, Rich Tauber, Don Ivino. I met some incredible, Bobby Garland. I met some just incredible Western anglers. And at that time, there was a little bit of a huff between the East and the West. The Western anglers felt like they had been slighted, and they felt that the air that the Eastern anglers had, they felt like they were superior. I had no knowledge of this until I got there, and I saw that there was some friction. And I learned very early that these Western anglers are incredible. Think about the flipping technique that Dee Thomas brought to our world, and of course Dave Glebe brought it over here and kicked our hind end with it. And what Bobby Garland did, and the tube jig, and all the things that Bobby Garland, just an incredible lure inventor and just a master angler. And then Don Ivino, Fred Ward, Gary Klein. I mean, look what Gary's accomplished, unbelievable. And all these Western anglers. Did you feel slighted at all being in the western part of the world, bringing this Bass Resource Forum, or did you feel any of that at all?
That's kind of a two-part question. Yes, the western side of the U.S. does still feel that today, primarily because the large tournament circuits don't come out west. It's just too far to travel, too much expenses, a variety of reasons. A lot of good, solid business reasons too. But at the end of the day, the West Coast is virtually left out of the large tournament scene. And so there is sort of a feeling like, hey, man, we're being ignored. And so that still goes on today. However, for Bass Resource, for the longest time, for that reason, honestly, Hank, when I started it, I did not disclose the location of where Bass Resource originated from. It wasn't until maybe 10 years into it that I started to allude to, hey, we're in the West Coast. Because I wanted, not only because of the possibility of that slight, or that you mentioned that perceived superiority. I don't know if that ever existed. I don't think I felt that. But I did it because I wanted Bass Resource to be something that everybody can enjoy. And it's a national resource. It's a national publication, if you will, like a TV show. Right, is that everybody can view no matter where they are and take part of and learn from. I think if I made it like, hey, we're here in the West Coast, it would make it. Some people might think that, oh, well, this is only for the West Coast. This isn't for me, right? So I deliberately kind of left out any geographical references for quite a long time for that reason.
Well, I know from my standpoint, some of the greatest anglers in the entire world, some of the greatest techniques and method, drop shot, tube jigs, I mean, on and on and on, West Coast innovation. And so I think the West Coast anglers per capita are the best fishermen in the world. I mean, it's amazing what talent has come from the West. So I've never been in that group that felt like that Eastern anglers were superior, never, ever. I think it's a level playing field. I think we're all in this together. There's been a lot of innovation that's came from the East, been a lot of innovation came from the West, and we're all Americans, and we're all on a level playing field in my book. You know, I weighed Jason Wheeler in at some junior world championship tournaments years ago, and I said, right here is a guy, remember this name, Jason Wheeler. He's going to be a world champion one day. He's just awesome. Well, then I go to the West Coast and I fish with Kyle Grover, and I said, let me tell you something about this kid. You're looking at a future world champion. This kid has got what it takes. He's got the intensity. Of course, Wheeler has accomplished a lot, and Kyle Grover has stayed on the West Coast for the most part, won the U.S. Open 2 years ago, finished in the top 5 again this year. What an angler. So I don't care where you come from or what geographical part of the world you're from. Some people have got that intensity and that that wheel and drive, and I noticed that in Kyle Grover just like I did in Joseph Wheeler, and both those kids are unbelievable today. So it's amazing. It doesn't matter whether it's east or west. It's all about catching a fish, and the fish don't care where you're from.
Yeah, that's so true. I get those questions sometimes where people are like, well, that technique works really well in the Midwest, but I'm down in Florida or something like that. And they're like, well, the bass don't know where they're located. They react to their environment, and that could be, it doesn't matter. So okay, so it doesn't get down, the water temperature doesn't get down to 42 degrees in Florida, but the water temperature did drop relative to what they're used to having, and they react to that in similar fashion regardless of where they are. The temperature gauge may be a little different, but you still get that same sort of a slowdown with metabolism and whatnot. So I think that's kind of something that I continue to educate about. Is a bass in North Carolina is the same bass that's in California. That's the same bass that's in Oklahoma. The techniques still work. I've taken, I love, this is not contrived here, but I love your spinnerbait. So white 3/4 ounce Hank Parker spinnerbait, it's been my favorite for decades, and I've caught so many fish on it. And some people think, okay, I'll use gold blades. Well, that's only good, because you're up north and you got perch. I went down to Texas and I caught a 9.5 pounder on one. So, it works. The same way with tubes. You mentioned tubes. I grew up fishing all the different finesse techniques, and I've taken tube bait and gone all over the Southwest and Southeast and up in the North and caught largemouth, smallmouth, spotted, all on tubes. Again, it's not like a particular latitude where they're going to like a particular bait or not. It's how you present it to them in matching the conditions, and the bass will react to it.
I've gone to a couple of writer conferences and some different scenarios where I was with Buzz Ramsey and with Gary Roach and Al Linder. And we're all there, all different parts of the country, and we're fishing southern waters, and they're catching as many or more fish than I am, and here they are from all these different places. And I learned real early on that it doesn't matter where you're from, it's your ability to read water. And as you say, a bass is a bass. It doesn't matter if he's in Washington, it doesn't matter if he's in San Diego, it doesn't matter if he's in Cuba or Canada or Venezuela. A bass is a bass, and they respond and react to lures very similar no matter where you are. It doesn't make any difference. So to be able to report and put together a form that educates people, it really doesn't matter where you're from.
True. Yeah, absolutely. We have some people joining our forums that are from Japan, from Italy, from Spain, Brazil, all around the world, and in Korea. And then we have some of our military personnel that are stationed around the world, and they'll join on the forums too. And it's fun to hear them report back on their experiences from other countries. And it's very similar. South Africa, they're experiencing summer right now. It's great to connect with all these people and to learn. Not only the differences, but also how similar things are, regardless of latitude. That is just remarkable. So,
it seems like that the Japanese fishermen, they're very innovative. I mean, and the guys that come over here, Taco Amora and on and on and on, all these guys seem to do extremely well, and it's a wealth of development and engineering and lures that come from Japan. How many followers do you guys have on your forum from Japan?
I don't know the exact number, but I would say it's around 5,000, maybe 5 to 10,000 in that range. And I would expect that to continue to grow because as popular as it is in Japan, it's still growing. The innovations are out of necessity because there's so many Japanese anglers per capita, per lake, and a lot of them don't have boats. And at first you think like, well, what, they can't afford boats? Well, it's not that, is they don't have room for boats. If you've ever been over there, most homes and whatnot don't even have a garage. There just isn't enough room. And the roads and the streets are very, very narrow, and a lot of lakes don't even have boat ramps. So they're shoulder to shoulder on the shoreline with dozens of other anglers competing for the same fish. So the innovations that they come up with to entice these heavily pressured bass and still catch fish doing that is nothing short of remarkable. So, you get these lures from Japan, and sometimes you're like, that looks kind of funny. I don't think that's going to work. But then you try it over here in the States, and the bass absolutely annihilate it. It's like, there's something to it. It's been, I don't know if you know about this. You probably know this, but maybe your viewers don't. But a lot of the Japanese baits, it's an interesting nuance in Japan that I found out when I was over there, is some of the baits will be released in Japan and will not be released abroad. They will keep it there within the borders of Japan. And the Japanese anglers really gravitate towards that. It's like, this is our own. And they will use that for years, even if it becomes hugely popular. Like we've seen the dice baits recently come out here in the US, and the poop baits, as they call them. But they were popular in Japan for 5 years, 6 years before anybody else knew about it. Because what happens is they ride that wave of popularity for as long as they can. And then when it starts to wane in popularity, then that's when they introduce it to the rest of the world. So when you go over there to visit Japan, you see a lot of techniques and a lot of baits and a lot of different equipment that you would not ever see in the States, because they kind of keep it exclusive to themselves for a while. And it's so fascinating to see what they're doing and how they're doing it.
I had a Japanese young man that wanted to fish with me, and so he wrote me a letter. And of course, I had to have an interpreter to read it and explain what he was saying. But anyway, we did a show together about 1994, 1995. And I started looking through his tackle box, and I thought, wait a minute, where did you get all this stuff? And of course, after a while, he realized how intrigued I was, so he shut that tackle box. He didn't want me looking at it. But I was amazed at some of the finishes, and it was like they had put fish skin on lures, and I mean, just all this incredible paint jobs and finishes and that I'd never seen before. And this was 20 years ago, so 30 years ago. Amazing. The technology they had then that we never saw. Those baits that I saw in his tackle box never made it to America. I never saw anything that looked like them. So I was blown away. Of course, he was hush-hush, and he didn't volunteer to give me any. He wanted to catch a 10-pound bass, and I caught a 10-pound bass that day. And so they asked him to sum up the show in Japanese. And so he finished. When we finished, I said whatever I had to say, and God bless you, I'll see you next week. I'm Hank Parker. And then he had the right to say what he wanted to say, and he said it in Japanese. And I saluted him and thanked him, and only to find out later that what he said was I was a boat hog. I thought he was complimenting me, and he was saying I stole his 10-pound bass. If I would have been more generous with the front of the boat, he would have caught it.
That's awesome.
I had to take ownership. I was pretty aggressive that particular day, and we were catching some big fish, so I was fired up, and I probably didn't give him quite as much space as I should have. So I'll take ownership. I was a boat hog.
That's awesome.
So let me ask you about all the controversy. We talk about it every podcast. We can't get away from it. But Sarah Beth is well-versed on, well-informed on forward-facing sonar. We get a lot of hate mail every time we talk about it from both sides, because I'm kind of in the middle. Therefore, I get shot at from both sides. How about, has that created controversy on your forum, or is that something that you stay away from, or where does that play in
we see it on the forum
your world?
constantly. And it's definitely divisive. No doubt about it. There's the haves and have-nots, and there's the pros and the cons, and the people that are advocate for it, and those that feel it's cheating. We see all sides of it manifest itself on the forums, and one of the things, just as an aside, but a rule, the main rule on the forums is treat each other with respect. That's like the main rule I have. You can't treat someone with respect, even if you disagree with them. Then maybe go to Facebook or something. But for us, it's, you can have a discourse and agree to not agree with each other without getting into a fight. So we have some really good discussions of the pros and cons. So it's interesting to see both sides of it presented in a manner where people don't get upset. And then you really get to hear the details come out and the information on and like I said, I think I'm more like you, Hank, where I'm more in the middle as well, because I can see both sides of it clearly.
Well, I think that is so awesome. What you said is we got to police this thing, and everybody's got to respect each other. And I think that's the only way we're ever going to really accomplish what we want to accomplish, and that is whatever is best for our sport. So when you have people that have respect for one another and they collect the data and they give you their viewpoint and you respect that and vice versa, and it comes back and forth, I think that's the way we can solve this issue without disrespecting one another. And I'll tell you, when it first came out, I've been reminded of this multiple times, that I stood pretty firm against it because I was the have-not. And I didn't really completely understand it. And so I automatically took a position that was somewhat negative. And I regret that, but nevertheless, you can't take back. You can't go back and erase what your stand was. So again, I'm man enough to take ownership that I jumped the conclusion and I made an analysis prior to having enough information to make solid, sound, credible judgment. So then I started getting engaged in it, and I loved the technique. I love to do it myself. I love forward-facing sonar because it's such an incredible challenge, and it's so different for me. So, and I'm not good at it at all. And part of that is because I fish with Humminbird, and they did not have the technology that some of the competitors had. So I was kind of behind the eight ball. Now that's leveling off now. There's a new generation of Humminbird product that's pretty incredible, to be honest. So now I'm more on a level playing field, and I'm learning a lot, and I enjoy that. But I'm not sure that it is the best thing overall for the sport. Somewhere there has to be some kind of a regulatory committee that looks at it objectively and says, okay, here's what I think we can do to make it fair for both sides, and come to a compromise agreement where we have what is best for both sides.
And I think some of the tournament organizations are trying to come across with that approach. The recent rule changes that have come out for next season are along those lines. Like, you can use it during practice, but not during tournament, for example. Some organizations are going with that route. So trying to limit its use to a certain extent. And I think that's fine. They need to experiment with this technology to figure out what's the right use of it during a tournament. But I think it goes beyond that. The recreational anglers, some will say that this technology allows them to kind of clean house on a lake and catch some of those fish who before have never even been caught or fished for, which is a large population, we're finding out. And you could actually damage a fishery if you take too many out. That's why we have limits in place. But in some instances, it could be more harmful to a fishery. And so to understand those dynamics, maybe those limits, maybe the use of that technology has not been addressed in some fishing regulations in some states. They may come into play, and they may need to actually rethink this and see how it can impact, positive or negative, the overall food chain and ecosystem within a lake, for example. So I think there's a lot for us to learn in that direction. I think also it's a good use from a biology standpoint. We're learning there's a lot more fish out there, bass out there roaming in open water than we thought. Chasing schools of bait fish that we thought we didn't we always have seen, you and I grew up where they were always under a log or in the bushes or under a dock. And now we're finding there's schools out there roaming, just kind of like trout, going after food the whole time. We didn't know that happened. So we're learning new things about bass behavior. I think that can only be good for the sport. The more we learn about the bass and their habitat and how they survive can only help us give them better habitat and help the species thrive. So there's a lot of things I think we're learning about right now.
Well, yes, sir. It showed me that I didn't know as much about bass as I thought I did. I really am surprised at how many fish, like you fish a lake like Lake Norman in North Carolina where I used to live, a lot of boat docks. That boat dock pattern is a pattern 365. It's a hard pattern to beat. Most of the tournaments are won in or around boat docks. And those fish sometimes would pull off of those boat docks, and I thought they migrate to a different location. What I didn't realize is the more pressure you put on those fish, they didn't go anywhere. They just pulled out and suspended out in the middle of the creek. They didn't swim to the back of the cove or go to the point. And so I'm out there looking for fish, thinking that those fish that were on those boat docks had moved out on the point or moved out on the creek channel or moved to the back of the cove. That wasn't the case at all. They just pulled right out in front of those boat docks and suspended, and I never knew they were there.
It's the old adage is that the bass don't
Yeah,
books
it's
we
crazy.
Write, right?
Yeah, yeah. But it showed me that they behave different than I always perceived them to behave. So I was wrong. And then another thing it taught me is I'm sitting there and I'm looking at one on a stump, and there's a bass by this stump, and I'm changing lures or whatever, getting ready to catch, and he leaves. He leaves that stump. He don't stay on that stump. And he swims over to the boat dock. And I'm thinking, well, he's moved. Well, I'm getting ready, and so now I'm rigging something up to fish under the boat dock, and boom, he's back on the stump. They're just like a shark. They're circling around. They're looking for an ambush point, and they don't stay still like I used to think. And that did two things for me. One, it showed me I didn't know as much as I thought I knew, but two, it gave me a lot more confidence fishing behind another boat. I used to think, well, they've already fished that stump, and they fished that dock, and they fished this brush pile, so they've already covered it. But now I know that fish may not be on that stump when they were there or on that boat dock or on that brush pile. They're moving. So I got a good chance of being able to present my bait to a fish that didn't see their bait, even though they're just 100 yards in front of them.
That's very true. You're absolutely right, because I used to think if I was behind a boat, I'd have to fish something different to maybe he picked off all the active fish in front of me, so I have to fish with a worm or a jig to get the more lethargic fish. And this has totally opened up all of our eyes to realize that, yeah, well, he may have not been there at the right time. And when he left, then other bass moved in, and they will bite the same lure that he was throwing. It just changes your whole perspective. Or you go down a whole bank and you're really productive, you can turn around and go right back down that bank and catch more fish because more are moving in. Just stuff like that. Sometimes we may have realized that. Like if we go down a productive bank, and like I used to do this all the time, I still do this. Go down a productive bank, catch a bunch of fish on a fast-moving lure, then turn around to a slower-moving lure and go back down and catch more fish. I always thought it was because there's active fish in an area, so you can get those first, and then the ones that aren't as active, you can get them on the second pass. What I didn't realize, and what you're saying is true, it was replenished with other fish that weren't there, they weren't present when I initially made my presentation. Now they're there. Totally changes your perspective and your approach on how you fish it.
Yeah, and we learned that fish have personalities a lot like people, that they don't necessarily follow in a group, and you can't pattern all fish. The old theory, which is still an active theory, and it's accurate to a degree, but not as accurate as we thought. In the fall of the year, when the plankton rises and the bait fish move to the back of the cove, so do the bass. But not all bass. There are a lot of bass that are still out there on that summertime pattern. They may not be on the bottom. They just suspend up. And so we're looking, and a lot of times the bigger bass, are just suspended up in the water column that we never knew existed. So I like the information that I'm able to retrieve from forward-facing sonar. And I just want to make sure that it's on record that I'm not for it, I'm not against it, I want what is best for the sport. So I think as we learn, and we can learn a lot from just watching that screen, as we learn, we'll figure out as we go along what is the best thing for the sport, because all the innovation is not going to go away. We're not going to stop technology. It's coming whether we like it or not. So we need to figure out a way to regulate it, to keep it within the boundaries of making fishing level and an opportunity for all that want to be a participant in the sport itself.
Let me ask you this. Do you think it's helped you target a certain size of fish?
It has not me, and I will be honest, and I may end up getting fired for this. I've worked for Humminbird for 40 years, but I've been at a big disadvantage. They have now overcome that. Everything that the competitors had was patented, and Humminbird has had to find a whole new route. So their whole system works differently than the competitors. So I was at a disadvantage. I could not see my bait. I could not see and distinguish bigger fish as well as people that had other brands. But that's changed. That's changed just in the last 2 weeks. And so starting the 1st of January, next week, they're going to start shipping the new Mega Live 2. And I will be in that category where I'll be able to look at a fish and discern the size. I have not. And part of that may have been me. There's other people that were running Humminbird that maybe did a much better job of determining that. I'll take ownership again that I was not the best at it. I wanted to be, and I've really enjoyed challenging. You know, it's always a challenge to learn a new technique and a new method, and so I like that. And it's something totally different, and but I have not found
I think
for
that's
me
a good
personally.
Point. The learning curve on some of this new technology, you can spend a lot of time, really as much time as you want, learning the nuances and basically having your face glued to a screen. And it's true, the more effort you put into it, the more time you put into it, the more you learn. But going back to the beginning of our conversation, fishing is supposed to be fun. And how much of that is fun versus work, or how much does that take away from just fishing and enjoying being out on the water? Like, is the technology, and what I'm relating to, what I'm trying to get at, Mr. Parker, is we have a lot of our population that have our faces, in the screen of a phone, or on our computers watching YouTube like we're doing now, or anything like that. And it can get to a point where there's too much and you miss out on other things going on in life. So do you think that it's possible that this new technology might interfere with that interaction with your friends on the water, or just enjoying the sounds and the scenery and being on the water?
I do, and that was one of my main concerns. And you can only really speak of how it applies to you personally. When I go out, I've made up my mind. I'm going to get good with this thing. I'm going to be a scoper, man. I'm going to really get good with it. And I go out and I'll spend 3 or 4 hours, and I enjoy it. And then I get, after 3 or 4 hours, I get where it's not so much fun anymore. And I say, to heck with this, and I'll go skip a jig under a boat dock, or I'll go throw spinnerbait in a tree, or I'll go out on the ledge and throw a drop shot at random. And I enjoy that. So I'm glad I have the knowledge of being versatile and being able to resort to other methods and other techniques. I think, from a personal standpoint, and this is just what I've experienced, I think if all I knew was how to scope, that I would get bored and burn out. I think it would take away. So being able to mix all of that together and have an arsenal that will allow you to fish different methods and different techniques, which include forward-facing sonar, I think it makes the sport more fun. At least it does for me. So I think being able to do other things is important to keep the sport fun.
We're in agreement there. I think technology, whether it's on the boat or elsewhere, can interfere. It can become too much. It enhances our lives and helps our lives, but there's an inflection point where it becomes a hindrance. And we need to keep that balance in mind even when we're on the water. There are days where I'll go out, I'll check what the water temp is, and I'll turn off my electronics just and go out and just let's see if I can do it like I used to, fishing out of an old John boat. Can I do it? And that's a challenge too. Just to see if you can piece it together without the use of electronics. Sometimes I find that really fun, and I'm hearing there are some tournament circuits out there that they're like that, like no electronics at all. And that puts a whole different twist on it, and that's fun too. So I think the use of technology definitely has a place and a use in our sport, but it's not necessary.
Well, a lot of that is really going to depend on you. And where our future goes is a lot of that is going to depend on you. The responsibility that you have with your platform and with all the followers and the information that you give, a lot of that is going to come back to how well you and how well I do a job on promoting the sport of fishing and regulating and keeping a balance that is fair for all and keep fishing in a perspective that it's fun for everybody and it's something that we all need to enjoy. So the way we handle things, the type of ambassador we are, we're leaving a legacy, who we are, what we stand for, and what the sport's about. So we're all really bound to be fair and honest and preserve the sport itself. And that's what I've told all the people that say, well, you're against technology, you're making a wrong stand. Let me make it totally, perfectly clear. It is my objective and desire to do whatever is best for the sport. And if I'm wrong on a position that I take, I will man up and say, I was wrong. And you're right. So I think we have to do what you said early on, and I'm glad you policed that, and that is so important that we have to respect one another and we have to come together with the objective of let's do what's best for the sport, not technology or not old school. What is best for the sport today, and how can we make sure that we're fair for all the people involved? And it takes time to work these things out. And you carry a big, big stick in this fight, man. You have a lot of influence on a lot of people, and to keep things in perspective and keep both sides respectful of each other, I think that's how eventually it's going to come to a head, and we're going to figure out a solution to keep the hostility out of it and keep people friendly enough to be able to meet at the peace table and a conference table and have a peace talk and resolve any fallout and make it regulate it to where it's the best thing.
Absolutely.
For the sport
Very well
itself.
said. Very well said. And to add to that, most of us all started bass fishing from the shore, or with our dads. And back in the day, you didn't have electronics. And nowadays, canoe and kayak fishing is huge, partly because of budgetary reasons. And not everybody can afford electronics, or a lot of people now are fishing from the shore more so than it's become very, very popular. Well, electronics, don't really come into play there. And that is almost like the foundation of our sport. And if we don't acknowledge that and show that, hey, you don't have to have these electronics to catch fish. There are other ways to figure out how to triangulate. Remember doing that before GPS came out? And we used to triangulate spots, right? And understanding, look at the landscape and then envisioning that, how it went underwater. Without the use of electronics, you can still find and catch fish. That will help. I think some people might think, oh gosh, I can't catch them if I don't have electronics and I don't have the budget for it. So therefore I'm not going to fish. Like, I want to make sure those folks are welcomed into the sport and that they can still go out and have fun and enjoy it and catch plenty of fish without having to spend a lot of money on these electronics.
Yeah, and on the flip side of that, we don't want to punish the people that have worked hard and saved their money and they invest in these electronics and they're benefiting from them. So we don't want to shame them and say, well, you're cheating, that's unfair. We don't want to take that side, so we want to be fair to all. And people say, well, you don't need a $100,000 bass boat to catch fish. No, and I started out, I didn't have one, but I got one now, and I love it, and I don't want to give it up, and I don't want you to look down your nose at me because I have it. That was a dream of mine. I never thought I'd achieve it. I pinch myself every day I sit in that boat. I can't believe I own this boat. It's so awesome. But I don't want to regress, and I don't want to have to apologize for prioritizing my revenue to buy a bass boat. I mean, that's a top priority for me. I want that Ranger Z521 decked out with all the stuff on it. And I don't apologize for owning that, and nor do I think that I'm better than the guy that's got the tiller handle 20-horse Mercury out there that has to pull a rope to crank his boat. He's just as important as I am. He has all the rights that I have. So it's respect, and we've got to respect one another and allow each one the opportunity for their position to be
Absolutely.
to be made known.
Yeah, 100%. I don't know if I can add on to that, Mr. Parker. You nailed it.
Well, I was in a meeting about 10 years ago, and the homeowners association of a big community on a lakefront invited me in to be a spokesperson, and they were heading up they're spearheading this to ban jet skis and water bikes and personal watercraft. They were so annoying, and they were just disturbing their life. And they wanted me to be a spokesperson. And I listened to their complaints, and I said, there's one problem. This is public water. And those guys that are on those personal watercrafts may want to get rid of us bass fishermen because we're in their way. We're all in each other's way because we're on public water. And if you've got homes on the lake and you're offended by the traffic, then that's not the traffic's fault, that's your fault. So you got to give and take. If you live on a lake and you don't want somebody fishing around your boat dock, then you need to take we the people's water away, and we the people's bass that's under your dock, take them away, and we won't fish around your dock. But as long as our water is under your dock and our bass are under your dock, we have the right to fish for our bass in our water, and your dock is in the way. So you can't look at this thing as you want rid of personal watercraft. Do they annoy me? At times they really do. But they have as much right as I have, and I have to respect that. And I am not for banning them or banning anybody else. If you've got a canoe, a kayak, a personal watercraft, water skier, you have as much right to the lake as I have, and I never want to take that right away from you, even though it may infringe a little bit on what I like to do. It's still public water.
Absolutely. And I think if we all look at it together as a resource that we all enjoy, being public waters, and just helping each other out on the water too, right? Lending a helping hand, for example, at the boat launch. If someone's struggling to back down the trailer or put the boat on the trailer, what have you, instead of looking at the guy and cursing at him, then get out of your truck and go down and offer a hand, even if it's a jet skier, right? A measly jet skier, or whatever your thought may be on on someone that's not a bass angler, but it's another person enjoying the water just as much as you. And if you can help them out, then knock yourself out, man, go help them,
Yeah, I like that. Attitude has got a lot to do. I'm kind of leaving Sarah Beth out of this because I'm running with the ball. I tend to do this all the time. But Sarah Beth, what's your opinion about public waters?
About public water, well, I've done both. I've been in the bass boat, and I've also been behind the bass boat on a tube. So I think you nailed it on the head. I think you just have to respect each other, and people have a hard time doing that nowadays. They really do.
Unfortunately, that is too true. We have a hard time tolerating. People are more selfish and in a bigger hurry, I think, than we've ever been. We need to slow down a little bit, think about the other person, and respect. So that'll go a long way with all the methods and techniques and types of fishing, as well as type of
Yeah,
boating
it's like you
recreation.
want to go to a fishing area or lake and you see someone already fishing it. You're like, he's fishing my spot. I'm like, well, no, you're just the latest person to have found that spot. It's not your spot. Keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Snoozy.
There has been so much.
I
Oh my
used to think
goodness!
I'd have secret areas and secret spots, and only to find out, like, I would pre-fish an area, and like a whole new area I'd find on a lake, and it's loaded with fish. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to keep this. I'm going to fish this during the tournament, and then I go there, and there's like 25 other boats there, and I'm like, oh gosh, okay, I guess I'm the latest to the party, aren't I? It's like I didn't, there aren't any secrets anymore with
I
the
can't tell you how many
GPS and Google maps and everything else, and then you have your water skiers that maybe there's a certain cove they like to go to, and then you show up there and they're using it. Hey man, we all got to give each other some room and understand that we're all enjoying it, and we don't have spots or areas we own. It's just areas we prefer to fish, and if it's in use during that time, whether it's by another angler or by another recreationist, then go find another spot and go have some fun. Don't let it ruin your day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that. I can't tell you how many times in the tournament I was shocked when I got to my spot how many people knew where I was fishing. They took my spot. They took my spot.
Yeah, I lost the tournament because I had the mentality. I had like 3 or 4 spots mapped out, and I kept the last 2 really good ones for the last day. And I went to those, and people were on them, and I'm like, I don't have any more spots left, right? And it kind of messed with my mind and where to fish. Now I know better, right? It's what the fish are doing, and it's they could be doing it anywhere in the lake. I just need to find those areas. But it's not. Your tournament isn't dependent upon a specific spot. It's determined upon a specific pattern, right? And just that little bit of a change of mentality changed my success.
Well, I used to tell my son Ben, who loved to fish tournaments back in the FLW days, and Ben would call me after practice. He said, "Dad, I got 15 spots that are red hot. I'm trying to decide where I'm going to go first." And I said, "Well, the place you need to go first is a place you can stay all day because you only have one spot." No, I got 15. I said, "No, you only have one." He said, "No, Dad, I'm telling you, I got spots I don't think anybody else will find." I said, "You'll be surprised in the morning when you go to your number 2 spot, somebody's going to be sitting on it because if you found it, somebody else found it." And he learned that. It was a hard lesson learned. He learned, hey, there's somebody else going to be on every spot except the one
and that
I get
old
to
adage,
first.
don't leave fish to find fish. I've been in tournaments where I'm on fish and there's a lull in the action, and instead of waiting it out, I'm going to go find fish.
Yeah.
Well, I go look around, I can't find any. Say, all right, I'm going to go back to where it was. I go back. Well, somebody's on it now because I vacated it. So yes, yeah,
Yep, amazing.
Yep,
I've done that
I
a
thought I was the only
million
one who knew
times.
about that. I was like, nope. And that's all you can do then is at the boat launch.
Glenn, let me ask you, I'm going to shift
That's all you
gears
can
here
do is
because we're
at
running.
the tournament.
I'm going to shift gears because we're running out of time. I'm sorry. I'm going to shift gears because we're running out of time, and I hate that clock, but we're running out of time. And so what is the future for Bass Resource? What you got planned to change, or are you going to stay the same? What do you think the future holds for your form and what you've got going on at Bass Resource?
We've been doing this for about 30 years now. So it's a lot of the same. I think we're going to be doing more with in YouTube and some of the other social media channels. We haven't been as active in that in the past, so I think we'll be expanding into those areas just to reach those audiences who prefer those platforms. But really, it's much of the same thing. Bringing it takes a lot of work to bring forth what we do and to find that successful pattern. And so we're going to keep doing that and bringing it. As long as people enjoy what we do, then we're going to keep doing it.
Well, I commend you. You've done a fantastic job and you've helped grow our sport. And I know that you'll be fair to help resolve issues that are going to pop up in the future by keeping everybody civil and not let it be a forum that just is a bunch of controversy and fighting and squabbling. We need to talk about the good things of this sport and promote it and recruit these high school fishermen and get as many people involved as we can. And you're doing a great job. So keep up the good work, and I appreciate what you do. And as I say, I hate that clock on the wall, but we're out of time. So I just want to say thank you so much for being a part, and maybe we'll hook up and do this again one day.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Awesome.
And I can't wait to see it next year's iCast.
I look forward to seeing you, buddy. Hey, thanks for being with us. Everybody, tell everybody goodbye.
Bye. See you guys next week. It was
All
nice
right.
to see you,
We didn't
Glenn.
let her say much, but she just sat there and looked pretty, so that was good enough. Thanks for being with me. I'll see you next time. God bless you. I'm Hank Parker.